Great. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm William Daroff, the CEO of the Conference of Presidents. Thank you so much for joining us for this very important and timely Zoominar on factional instability in Lebanon. We have two wonderful guests. Our chair, Diane Loeb, was called away and had a conflict, so I will be conducting the Zoom today. We will have our usual format wherein we'll hear from both speakers, and then we will go to Q&A. And we will, at that point, if you'll raise your Zoom hand, you can ask a question. So it is my pleasure to kick us off today. Tensions between sectarian groups in Lebanon have risen in recent weeks to heights not seen since the 15-year civil war. Conflict between rival political factions recently culminated in a deadly gun battle in Beirut as the country's middle class grapples with worsening economic and humanitarian crises. Against this backdrop, Hezbollah is facing greater scrutiny by the Lebanese populace, an unlikely challenger from Hamas, which is expanding its operations in the north. We have, as I said, two very esteemed speakers to help us talk through these issues and to work through it. And to start, we'll have a sort of more global picture of the scene in the north in Lebanon from Lieutenant Colonel retired Orna Mizrahi. Her bio was sent out to everyone, but she is a senior research fellow at INSS, which she joined in December 2018 after a long career in the Israeli security establishment, 26 years in the IDF, 12 years in the National Security Council in the Prime Minister's office, her last role of which was as Deputy National Security Advisor for Foreign Policy. So we'll start with Orna, and then we will move to Lieutenant Colonel Sarit Zehavi, whom I will introduce at that time. So for now, let's go to Orna Mizrahi. And again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Okay, good day, everybody. I want to first to thank you for inviting me to join this discussion. And it will be very difficult to talk about Lebanon for 5 or 7 minutes, so but I'll try to do it briefly. In the last 2 years, we see that Lebanon is in a very dire situation. We are talking about a triple crisis in Lebanon: an economic crisis, political crisis, and of course the health crisis because of the COVID-19 pandemics. And then came the disastrous explosion in the port of Beirut in August 2020 that caused lots of casualties, 250,000 homeless in Beirut district, and 6,000 people were wounded. 2019, it is accurate because yesterday one of the people that were wounded died also. And the investigation is going on. Nothing happens as usual in Lebanon. Nothing advances. No achievement, and no compensation. And they are continuing, the families, to demonstrate and ask to continue with this investigation, but Hezbollah is doing its best to fail the investigation, and I think it's because they suspect that maybe the results of the investigation are going to be against them, so they are doing whatever they can to fail and sabotage this investigation that was started according to the request of the Lebanese population. And this was one of the reasons for the clashes it was on the October 14th, so last week in the street of Beirut. Now, usually we are starting to mark the devastating situation of Lebanon since October 2019, when the popular protest was erupted. But I think that we must say and pay attention to the fact that Lebanon is suffering from very difficult diseases that are not new at all. And I think it will be very important to pay attention to this disease and to talk a little bit about that. I think that it's four main diseases. The first one, of course, is the fact that the method of the division of the power is according to the ethnic sects in Lebanon. And there is some kind of arrangement of who rules what, and what it causes is a kind of paralyzation of the government, and very difficult, lots of difficulties in managing the governance of Lebanon. And we see mismanagement everywhere through the decades, and not just the last 2 years. The second disease is, of course, the corruption. The Lebanese system is very corrupt, I think more than in other places. And I'm talking about all bodies of governance. And it is connected with the fact that the third disease is the fact that we have this corrupt elite that is leading Lebanon. And I'm talking about elite of all sects of Lebanon. It's the Maronite Christian, the Shiite, and the Sunnis, all of them. That along the year has accumulated assets on the expense of the Lebanese population, became very rich, and they don't want to hurt their assets, and this is why they are not doing anything to promote any reforms that are needed for rehabilitation of the Lebanese awful situation. And about the fourth reason, I'm sure that you all will agree with me, is of course the Hezbollah's negative role in the Lebanese system. We have a state within a state. Some say that Lebanon is the state, and the rest of Lebanon is the state inside Lebanese Hezbollah state. But anyway, we have a kind of a terror organization that has its semi-military independent army inside the state. It has its institutions for supporting its own people, the Shiite, and I'm talking about social and economic activity of the organization inside Lebanon for the sake of its own people, the Shiite people. And the last example for that is, of course, the fact that Hezbollah was able to make the Iranian fuel to come into Lebanon from the midst of September because of the awful energy situation in Lebanon. And although the government of Lebanon was supposedly against it, Hezbollah could bring it in because he controls, it has its own control on passages between Syria and Lebanon, and he could allow the trucks with the fuel to come in. He has its own fuel station that he can manage to divide the fuel to these stations and to decide in what price and how and who is going to get this fuel. So you see, we have a factor that is independent within the state, and it's a big problem for the, of course, for the state of Lebanon. Another reason is the fact that Hezbollah is also a part of the government. He is in the government, and he's got, because of its alliances with big parts of the Lebanese politics, he can influence the decision making and even stop and prevent decisions that are against its interests. That's why I say that Hezbollah has a very negative role in Lebanon. Now, I don't know how well you know about what's going on inside Lebanon. The situation is, of course, awful, and some say that is the crisis is the worst crisis that Lebanon ever had since its establishment, at least, and maybe even before. So I'll put some parameters very briefly about what's going on from the economic aspect. And we're talking about state that it's in a very huge external debt. It's something like $100 billion of external debt. No money, no reserves of money, so they can't subsidize anything. That's why the prices of the fuel and other essential products that were subsidized are not subsidized anymore, and the prices are getting rising all the time. It's an economy that was dependent on importing the products from abroad, and now that they don't have money, they can't import. So there is less and less essential products in the stores. No electricity, no fuel, no water, no internet, no basic products. The health system has collapsed. No drugs, no medical manpower. A large number of the nurses and the doctors flow away and went to work somewhere else, that they can have more money for what they are doing. There is hyperinflation, awful hyperinflation in Lebanon. So the wages are so low now that they can't buy anything. The Lebanese pound has lost more than 90% of its value. There is a rising number of unemployment. They talk now about 50%, 60% of unemployment, and according to the World Bank data, and even now more than 3/4 of the population and below the poverty line in Lebanon. So whoever can flee, the situation is awful. The standard of living is in a very low standards, and everyone who can flee away and has the money to do so is doing it, but not a lot of people can do it. And in the last 2 years, the situation was worsened from day to day, and nothing was achieved. The popular protest that was started as we started in October 2019 continues, but with no achievement, no achievement at all. And the incidents of violence are just on a rise. One thing that I want to emphasize is I talked about the dominant status of Hezbollah, and Sarit is going to elaborate about it. But I must say, when we are talking about the Lebanese society, that especially since the explosion in the port, the public criticism of Hezbollah is growing. And this is something that we have to pay attention. We pay attention to it, and to see if it has to do something, if it is something that can bring some kind of change to Lebanon.
Great. Can we shift to Sarit?
just two very short remarks.
Okay.
The first one is about the international community. As I understand it, there is no interest in what's going on in Lebanon in the international community. I think they are very much disappointed from the leadership, and they say you can't do anything. Lebanon is controlled by Hezbollah, and anyway, everything that goes in goes to Hezbollah, so we can't help Lebanon. And all the assistance, the big numbers that were offered from the IMF and others are not coming in because they are on condition that there will be some reforms, and the corrupt leadership is not going to make any reforms that are going to harm its own interests. So it's a kind of a vicious circles that Lebanon is in it. So I'll stop here. And if you will ask me, I will say something about the Israeli approach towards what's going on in Lebanon.
Great. Thank you so much for that very insightful overview. And we will obviously have time for questions and answers in a few minutes. It's my pleasure to now move the podium to our friend Sarit, Lieutenant Colonel retired. Sarit Zehavi is the founder and CEO of the Alma Research and Education Center. She served for 15 years in the IDF Intelligence Corps, initially in the Research and Analysis section, and then later in the Northern Command. Like INSS, where Orna is from, Alma, where Sarit is from, are very good friends of the conference, people that we work very closely with, and we look forward to Sarit's insight more from the Israel perspective, dealing with the conflict. So Sarit, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much, William. I'm very honored to be here with you today. And I want to make actually in the short time 3 statements. And the first statement is connected to what Orna said. The growing criticism against Hezbollah does not mean that Hezbollah is losing its power in Lebanon. This is very important. First, as Orna elaborated, and I'm not going to elaborate more, Hezbollah has a huge civilian infrastructure in Lebanon, not only a political one, but also a social one, which is even more important, that enables it to be involved in every aspect of life of the Lebanese, and that way get into the vacuum of the Lebanese government that actually doesn't provide many of the services to its population. Hezbollah has an organized army, what we call a army of terror or a terrorist army, that has higher capabilities than the Lebanese army forces. And I think most important, nobody messes with Hezbollah. And anybody who tries to mess up with Hezbollah, who express criticism, especially from the Shiite sect, that express criticism against Hezbollah, gets what we call a visit. Somebody come to their house, knock on their door, or not knocking, just open the door, threatening them a little bit, and the day afterwards we see an apology, we see a different tone, and we see that the criticism fading away. And it happens again and again and again. We've seen this with the families of the casualties in the blast in Beirut. We've seen this before with the protest. We've seen this with the fighting in Beirut. That way we could see how armed are Hezbollah operatives inside Lebanon. And that's why nobody messes up with Hezbollah. Nasrallah himself dedicated a big part of his recent speech to the investigation of the blast in Beirut, claiming that the judge who investigates the blast is actually politicizing the investigation and is activated by the Americans. And he promised that he has 100,000 fighters or combatants of Hezbollah that were trained to fight Israel, but will be able also to fight Lebanese themselves against the head of the Christian main opponent group to Hezbollah, which is Samir Jaja, which in a clash in Beirut just 2 weeks ago were killed around 7 people. So Nasrallah, as I always say, there is no shame anymore. No shame in threatening the Lebanese and no shame in hiding its connections with Iran. Of course, he doesn't have 100,000, neither against Israel nor against the Lebanese. So in this respect, there is no problem. So the main threat against Israel is not the 100,000 fighters. The main threat against Israel is actually 100,000 rockets, and probably even more than that. Rockets from various types that are positioned inside the homes or under the homes and civilian infrastructure in various places in Lebanon. And you can see in the map that Hezbollah actually divided the different kind of ammunition to the various areas. While when I'm saying first line of defense and second line of defense, of course, it's defense involving offense, because these rockets will be launched to Israel and will be part of the attack against Israeli civilian infrastructure as well. These rockets are very dangerous. They have various ranges. They can get to various ranges covering almost all of the state of Israel. And those who are of Fatah 110 here, which are for what we call medium range, are the rockets that Hezbollah is now putting a lot of efforts to make them accurate, PGMs, precision guided missiles. We don't know how many do they already have, but it's probably between a few tens to a few hundreds. And this is a problem when we speak about Israel's security. And again, these are all hidden in populated areas, mostly in Beirut, by the way. Third statement is actually not about Lebanon. I'm sorry, it's about Iran, but it's about Iran in the region. And here I want to show you a sculpture, but of course it's just to make you understand what we are experiencing here. This is a sculpture of Sulimani that was positioned next to the border between Israel and Lebanon to commemorate Sulimani's assassination a year after the assassination. This place is being seen from Israel. If you stand in Israel, you can see the sculpture very easily. And Sulimani here with the Palestinian flag next to him is pointing at Israel. What you can see in the background of the video is Avivim, just on the border. But Hezbollah is not the only proxy of Iran in Lebanon. And recently we had published a report about the deployment of Hamas in Lebanon, which is actually in the past few years, what we have seen is a process of empowerment of Hamas in Lebanon that was aimed to create another front against Israel, not only Gaza, but also from the north, not only by Hezbollah, but also by Hamas. And what you see in my map here is actually that this front was already activated in the last summer, while we had about 5 incidents of rockets launching from, by the way, UN area of operation, southern Lebanon into Israel. All in all, it's about a few hundreds of combatants in 2 units, 2 operational units, a few hundreds of rockets probably, including self-manufacturing capabilities inside Lebanon, and headquarters that are spread in the main towns in Lebanon, Tripoli, Sidon, Tyre, etc. All of that is based on the refugee camps, 10 refugee camps in Lebanon. The challenge for Israel is not only for Israel, let's put it this way. The challenge with the deployment of Hamas in Lebanon is also for Hezbollah. Because a situation or a scenario that could happen is that Hamas, from its own reasons or for the Iranian reasons, will launch rockets to Israel, will be too successful that way or another, and will cause to escalation on the northern border, an escalation that Hezbollah is not necessarily interested in. On the other hand, Hezbollah may be interested in escalating the situation on the northern border to create kind of a show-off to the Lebanese themselves and to create a message to Hamas saying, I'm the protector of Lebanon and nobody else. And this already happened last August when Hezbollah launched around 19 rockets to Israel, one after the other, burning huge area of nature reserves. One of them hit only a few hundred of meters from a mall in northern Israel in the Upper Galilee. All of that in order to send a message to the Lebanese themselves, not to the Israelis, but again, endangering Israelis. Bottom line is that the Iranians are building more than one proxy in Lebanon. By the way, they're doing the same in Syria, encouraging, assisting, in order to be capable of activating these proxies in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarit. Very much appreciate your insight and looking forward to Q&A. To remind everyone to ask questions, please use the hand raised function on the Zoom app. As I noted at the beginning, Diane Loeb, our chair, is unable to be with us today. It's my honor to be here with you, as well as with Malcolm Homeline, our vice chair. I also want to note our team that's been putting together these Zooms for the last year and however many months of COVID. It takes a lot of work to put them together, a lot of brainstorming. So thank you to the Conference of Presidents team for helping us put that together. I will ask the first question, and then again, if folks want to join Mindy in raising their hands, please do so. I have a two-part question, or two different questions. The first is for both questions for both of you. Lebanon is going through a social, political, and economic crisis, which we've talked about since the resignation of the interim Prime Minister Harari. What are Israel's security concerns involving Lebanon's teetering towards the status of a failed state? In which ways has Hezbollah been able to capitalize on these developments? And to what extent has the street concurrently blamed Hezbollah for the collapse? That's my first question. The second question is more sort of talklessly, looking at that map, Sarit, to what extent does Israel's missile defense capabilities allow for near 90-something% defense of Israel from these targets in the north, along the lines of their ability to defend with Iron Dome from Gaza? Those are my two questions. So whoever would like to start first, please speak up. Sarit or Orna? Sarit, you've unmuted first, so it's you.
Okay, I'll give the honor to Orna, no problem.
I'll start with the first one, and about how Israel sees Lebanon as if it's going to be a failed state, right? Well, the problem with the Israeli policy is that everything is according to the military threat that posed by Hezbollah. Israel sees Lebanon as a threat because of Hezbollah being there, and it is a military threat. And all of Israel's policy is involved in how you deal with this military threat, and nothing about what you are going to do with the state of Lebanon. Now, can I elaborate about it and elaborate about the different approaches in Israel about that?
Sure, please do.
There are two main approaches in Israel. The dominant one is saying Hezbollah is ruling Lebanon, and we have nothing to do with it. And maybe it's good for us because now we have an address. Hezbollah is the power that we have to deal with in Lebanon. And if we are going to have a war, it will be no problem because if we are fighting Hezbollah and we are destroying the Lebanese infrastructure, it's okay because it's Hezbollah. Everything is Hezbollah's interests. And this is the dominant approach, but the disadvantage of this approach is that you are taking in granted that Lebanon is Hezbollah, and Lebanon is going to be the foothold of Iran. And this is a great disadvantage, and there comes the second approach that says Lebanon is not yet all of it Hezbollah, and Lebanon can be saved. So let's think about what we can do, and Israel can't do it by itself because we don't have relations with Lebanon, and every time we ask to help, they reject our initiatives. So our possibility to help are very are not there. Israel can first think about it and change what we have to do with Lebanon, and then have some dialogue with the at least the powers that are ready to do something for Lebanon, like the United States, and here you come into the picture, like United States and France, and to think in which way we can help to change the destiny of Lebanon of being Hezbollah's and Iran's assets, and maybe change the things, and maybe we can save something from Lebanon.
But Orna, how is that not just a fool's errand? It's like, who could possibly solve Lebanon? And for us, it's like quicksand, right? I feel like
obviously you understand that I'm on the second. I'm thinking I'm on the second group that thinks that the international community have to do whatever we can to save Lebanon, and it's going to be very difficult. But if we are having a mutual effort, international mutual effort, to help the parts that are opponents of Hezbollah, and as I said, and Sarit said that it doesn't help to help these opponents of Hezbollah because Hezbollah anyway is gaining. I think that we don't have the privilege of raising hands and say, that's it, we can't do anything. And this is about that. About the security issues, Israel's policy is very clear. We are going to continue with our campaign against Hezbollah. It's a military, economy, and cognitive campaign to deter and to weaken Hezbollah. We are going to keep that our northern border will be safe and secure. And the third pillar is we are going to prepare ourselves to the next war because we think that, if you have this 100,000 rockets, and it's more than that, in the hands of Hezbollah, in the first act, maybe it's going to be launched to Israel in the second or fifth act. So according to the Hezbollah and Iran's interests. So we have to prepare ourselves to the next war that is going to be devastating anyway.
Great. Thank you. Sarit.
I see this in a little bit different point of view, of course. And I think that Lebanon is Hezbollah in a sense of the most powerful player in the Lebanese scene is Hezbollah. So we are actually talking on two scenarios inside Lebanon. One is deteriorating into a chaotic situation such as a third civil war, which is totally an option, which is something that I didn't used to say in the past, but when I see the younger generation that didn't experience the civil war that ended 30 years ago, I think, okay, so maybe they are willing to go to the streets. And maybe the older generation that is afraid of another civil war will not be able to control the flames. This another civil war will actually weaken Hezbollah and give an opportunity to Israel to carry out a policy of campaign between the wars the same way it is doing in Syria, in Lebanon. The second scenario, which also be very probable, is a scenario that Hezbollah will officially, today it's unofficially, officially take over, but in any case, it will not be able to take over all of the territories in Lebanon. It's not sovereign, full sovereignty, because there are areas in Lebanon that Hezbollah cannot get in, whether it's Druze areas or specific Christian areas. So it will not be full control. And if this will happen, in any case, if this will happen, and again, it may happen, it of course means very clearly that, okay, it's a new situation. And it's a situation that, yes, there is no hope. Yet I am saying that already today, the hold of Hezbollah in Lebanon is something that I don't have a solution for. I have a few answers, few things that maybe we can talk about what to do, but I don't have a solution. And I'm usually being asked, usually from American groups at the border, so what's the solution? And I'm always sorry to say, I don't see a solution. I'm not sure that the Lebanese themselves believe that there is hope or prospect, and that's why many of them are leaving. So the only hope for the Lebanese is looking at Lebanon the same way we are looking at Iran. And I'm sorry I'm saying something that extreme, because Iran is present there and Hezbollah is present there. If we will not fight that in a very decisive way, including its civilian organizations, we will end up with, exactly the same as it is in Iran. And that's why it's so important.
And on the missile defense question,
on the missile defense question, yes, of course, Israel has went a long way since 2006 in the area of missile defense. It's not only Iron Dome, by the way, it's few systems, layer after layer after layer, that actually create.
It's 4 layers, 4 layers.
4 layers that actually create, I was looking for the graphics, but I couldn't find it. Iron Dome, Chetz, Davidson, that creates almost a full protection. The problem is that each missile of Iron Dome costs about around $50,000, that there are limited amount of batteries. And when you compare the amount of rockets of Hezbollah to the amount of rockets, capabilities, soldiers, everything, when we speak about air defense, you understand that it doesn't match. And that's why rockets are very dangerous, though we have aerial defense, and everybody in Israel knows that there will be damage to Israelis and there will be damage to Lebanese if we will deteriorate into war. Another thing which is important to mention around that is the shelters. I live in the north. We don't have enough shelters. Many of the public shelters are not useful. They are flooded, they are dirty, they are locked. And by the way, we don't have enough time to run for shelter. I myself have 9 seconds to run for shelter if I hear the alarms. So that's also a problem. You cannot live in the shelter for a month, or I don't know how long the war will last. And this is only when I'm speaking on the north. I don't want to imagine what is happening in Tel Aviv, for example.
okay, thank you so much for that. I will now go to the most important person in these Zooms, Rachel Binder, to tell us who's next to ask a question. Rachel?
Next is Mindy Stein of Amuna.
Mindy, you're up. And you're muted. Sorry. You're still muted. Sorry, Mindy, we're not. There you go. I think I heard you. Go ahead.
So with everything you said, all the buildup of more weapons, now 2 proxies.
It's hard to hear you, Mindy. I'm sorry.
Wait, let me try to do my video higher then. Let's see. Video settings.
I don't know.
Video. Okay, wait, I'm getting it. I have
Maybe if you just use your booming voice, but quickly go for it.
You can hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Yes, I fixed the volume. I guess it went down. So with everything you said, all the buildup of more weapons, and now 2 proxies in Lebanon and Syria, and that you don't see a solution, shouldn't Israel be doing something preemptively to reduce or eliminate the threat of Hezbollah rockets before it has to actually confront, I would say, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Iranians all at the same time? So my question is, do the risks of doing that outweigh the benefits of a preemptive act? Because you don't see a solution.
Right. I will take that with your permission.
Sure, please go ahead.
Mindy, look, I'm now reading General Zraful book. He was the head chief of staff of the IDF in 1982 First Lebanese War. And I'm now reading the pages that are all about the First Lebanese War, and he's trying to justify the preemptive attack that Israel made back then, deciding to get into Lebanon to fight the terrorists that were endangering the state of Israel before they will get too strong. And everything he wrote was so relevant for today, which is unbelievable. And I am always saying that a preemptive attack is a problem, because we will not have any legitimacy from the international community. We never have. And as I've said, Lebanese will get killed. And I'm not sure we will have legitimacy from the Israelis themselves, because Israelis will get killed as well. And I think that's why I don't see any prime minister in Israel making this kind of decision to go to a preemptive attack. And I will tell you something that I am positive that Orna will agree with me. You can never be prepared enough to war. And the IDF or any army is all about either fighting or preparing for war. And you can never be prepared enough. So as long as there is no war, the main mission of the IDF is to get to prepare to war and to try to postpone the war as much as possible in order to make more preparations. Of course, the problem is that the other side is also making tons of preparations, but I don't see any Israeli prime minister making this kind of decision.
Can I add something about that?
Sure, go ahead briefly, please.
The main problem with what Hezbollah has is the precision missile project. And this is the main problem. And this is the thing that if somebody will think about preemptive action, it's going to be against the precision project. I don't know if you have read it, but we in the INSS, we had some memorandum about how the next war is going to look like in the northern arena. Anyway, you can read it in our site. And we were thinking about the issue that if Israel has to do something in a preemptive attack, it's going to be against these precision rockets. And we even put a number and said they are going to have something like 500 precise missiles. It's not existential threat to Israel, but it's a real threat to Israel, because the accurate missile, it's a real problem, because they are going to hit exactly the place they want to hit. It's not a statistic. This 100,000 statistic missiles that we are talking about. It's true that you need to be a very courageous leader to decide about it. And I think that the government has to think and to find where is the right moment to do it. The problem with that, the disadvantage, of course, is that any such an attack can deteriorate to a very wide range war. And this is the problem. But maybe if we find the way to do it when Hezbollah is not in the best of its the best situation, maybe we can achieve something with not deteriorating to a very large scale war. But as Sarit said, she doesn't see anyone. It needs a very courageous leader to do that.
Great, thank you very much. Rahel.
The next question is from Fred Zeidman.
First of all, hello, Sarit. How are you? I ask you this question so often, but we always get the same answer. And I'm going to see if you have any updated answer. If you could push forward 5 years from now, all along the northern border, which every time I watch your live Zooms, scare the hell out of me. How do you see the northern border looking, if you will, in terms of who are in the southern parts of Syria and Lebanon, whether or not we're going to see any major change in the occupation of either the country, and particularly if Lebanon is going to be a point of attack, or if it's going to be a storage depot for what's going on in Syria. Let me just ask that as broadly as I possibly can.
Of course, the answer depends on what the players would do. If the situation will continue the way it is today, and none of the players in the international arena, such as Russia, United States, maybe even, I don't know, the Europeans and China, will not stop the Iranians from continuing to establish its military presence and even its civilian presence in southern Syria. In 5-10 years, we're going to have South Lebanon in southern Syria. For the Iranians, it's much more challenging to carry out this plan for two reasons. First, because the population in southern Syria is Sunni, in opposed to the population in southern Lebanon, which is Shiite. So they are the natural supporters of Hezbollah in Iran. So the Iranians need to put a lot of effort in southern Syria to, to make the population Shiite. I'm looking for the right word in English. It doesn't sound well. But, and they are already doing that. We see mosques that are becoming from Sunni to Shiites. We see associations operating them. We see this happening, okay? But I'm not sure that they need completely to change them into Shiites or just to buy their support. And look what is happening with Hamas, for example. Nobody imagined that Hamas will become what it is today when the previous operation in Gaza ended in 2014. So in 5 years, if nobody would do anything drastic, we're going to end up with much more Hezbollah on the border. And I can tell you that today, even with the presence, you know, there is a hidden presence and a public presence. And the public presence, when I am going to the border and I see Hezbollah operatives standing in, like, without shame, taking photos of me, not afraid of anything, just coming and taking the photos below the Hezbollah flag, and you can see him over there. I was afraid, he was not afraid. And this is happening more and more now. They are not even hiding. So definitely the borderline is changing all the time. And again, it really depends of what will be done. But if nothing will be done, the situation will be much more dangerous than it is today.
Okay, we're running short on time. So I'm going to suggest to Rahel that we take the next two questions in a row and then have answers so we can get in everybody. So Rahel, who are the next two who are up?
Betty Ehrenberg from the World Jewish Congress and Nomi Colton-Max of Amenu. Betty?
Thank you so much. Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you, Sarit. Thank you, Orna. I was wondering, first of all, a month ago, we were still in United Nations meetings during the UN General Assembly meeting with the foreign ministers, etc., including Italy. Other countries extremely proud of their UNIFIL soldiers. Is there anything that we can do? There are a lot of Jewish organizations with NGO status at the United Nations. Is there something you think that we could do regarding the United Nations to really strengthen UNIFIL, to do something to make a change so that it can be effective? There's such a sense of frustration surrounding UNIFIL.
Great. So we'll take that as the first question, and then Nomi, can you ask a second question?
Sure. Thank you, Orna and Sally. Toda. At first, I agree with William. There was a mention of the United States or France, and we should all remember that before Americans had Afghanistan, we had Lebanon, and that's just not something that we're going to go back to. And I'll leave the French to show any success anywhere over the last however long. So what it does leave is what our hope had always been, was that the Saudis were going to be our savior in Lebanon. And they have also had failures. And in not one of your, nobody mentioned Syria at all today, although Syria keeps making sure that they're in the news talking about it. Is it just as useless as I assume they are? And, which brings us back to Sarit's very grim analysis.
Great. Thank you so much, Nomi. So UNIFIL and the role of the Gulf states and Syria in this, and if we could sort of quickly zoom through that so we can fit other people in. Who wants to, Sarit, do you want to start us off?
I'll talk about UNIFIL with your permission.
Sure. And then maybe Orna, you can talk about the regional. Go ahead.
Okay. Look, how should I put this? I've been dealing with UNIFIL for quite a while. Okay, maybe almost 2 decades. I don't think anything will change. I think all of us should change strategy. And if we assume that the situation someday will deteriorate into war, it's going to be very dangerous for UNIFIL, because Hezbollah will do everything it can to use UNIFIL as human shields, which means that it will be very dangerous for Israel as well, because it will damage our legitimacy. And that's why I think that, and I'm not sure this is the position of the official Israel, this is my position. I think that UNIFIL should be minimized. It is highly important to have a UN force in South Lebanon on the border to mediate, and UNIFIL successfully mediated between Israel and Lebanon in various topics, but not to solve the problem. It can't solve the problem for various reasons that I don't have the time to elaborate. And that's why it should be minimized. It should stay there, but be minimized to keep somebody that can preserve the trialogue, not dialogue, but it's not somebody that can actually solve the problem.
Orna, can you, for a minute, talk about the Saudis and Syria and the neighborhood?
Just saying that we have a dispute about UNIFIL presence, me and Sarit. I think that the problem is not with the number. The problem is with the mandate of the force and the mechanism of how they enforce what they have to do on Hezbollah, and they're doing nothing. So the number is not a problem. The problem is the mandate and the strength to do that. About the regional, they're also not very interested in what to help Lebanon. The Saudis don't want to help Lebanon because they think that the money will go for nothing, and they don't trust their friends, Lebanese Sunnis, to do so. So they don't want to help them at all. Every initiative that tries to bring them inside and do something is not achieving anything. But lately we have seen something that maybe it's the, I don't know, the light at the end of the tunnel. If you say it in English, I don't know, it's in Hebrew. It's a regional project to bring gas from Egypt through Jordan and Syria to Lebanon. And it's astonishing because because the pipelines of Egypt and Israel are connected. So it's going to be maybe even part of Israeli gas. Anyway, it's a plan that the current government of Lebanon is trying to advance. And if it will be achieved and they will implement it, it's going to be maybe something, regional project that will change the atmosphere at least.
Excellent. Thank you for that optimism. Rahal, next, wait, I see there's a question has been asked. The question from Judith Groisman is, how does what happened in Afghanistan affect the situation in Lebanon and the rest of the region? And so if you'll think about that, and then thank you for writing that out. That makes it quick. And then last, we'll go, before we go to Malcolm, we'll go to George Klein. If George, you have a very quick question, we can put that into the hopper here.
Just a quick one. We sit here as armchair observers. First of all, excellent presentation. We're living in Park Avenue in New York. And we hear the bottom line saying war, difficulty. Israel knows what's going on. What do you want for the American Jewish community to deal with in relation to what power we may have? We are not living in Israel. Our children are not in the wars. You talk about preemptive and war and war and war. This is dangerous for young people in Israel, et cetera, people who live there. What do you want, or what do you recommend for the American Jewish community to do during this very difficult period.
Great. Thank you, George. So impact of the hasty Afghanistan withdrawal and what sort of call to the action for the American Jewish community or the American government. Who wants to go first? I'll Orna, why don't you-
Just
ahead.
one sentence. I don't have, the medicine for all of Lebanon's diseases. But as you have noticed, I'm optimistic always. I'm trying to be, because you can't do anything in our region without being optimistic. And I think that what we can do is to try to strengthen the opponents of Hezbollah inside Lebanon. This is one thing that we can do, and we can do it through, and the second one is projects that help to ease the bad situation of the population, but big projects, not some few millions of dollars that doesn't change anything. Big projects that wouldn't go to the pockets of Hezbollah, but for the population of Lebanon. And I think that there are ways to supervise what's going on with these projects. And as I said, I think the most important thing is to strengthen the opponents of Hezbollah inside Lebanon, because we are doing everything we can to weaken Hezbollah, but we have to strengthen the opponents of Hezbollah.
And the impact of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think, Orna, that's probably more in your neighborhood. Can you just touch on that for one sentence before we go to Malcolm?
Well, there aren't direct implication of what's going on in Lebanon. It's more maybe on what's going on in Syria, and it depends what the Americans are going to do in Syria. They are going to stay there in the places that they are in the east, along the Iraqi border, or they are going to go away also from there. For us, for Israel, at least it's going to be a very bad decision, because it again strengthened the presence of Iran both in Iraq and in Syria, and it's a big problem.
Great, thank you. Malcolm, online.
Perhaps too complex for this late hour, but I wanted to ask about the Russians disbanding their militia group on the Golan and leaving a vacuum. What will happen to the troops, and what will happen in terms of filling the vacuum, given the tense situation already? And second, about actions being taken against Hezbollah. So Kosovo, Saudi Arabia, just in the last few days, others. Is there a pattern to this? And is there a way to cut off the funding that they're getting via Africa, which is making a big difference at this time for Hezbollah? And lastly, given the domestic demonstrations by the Christians, is the situation there exacerbating? Do you see that this will escalate, or does Hezbollah just crack down on them?
So many questions, but Sarit, you want to start?
So a few answers. Right?
I will take the Russian one. There is never a vacuum. And the Russians were not really there. I think it was a misinterpretation of reality, that people believe that the friends of the Russian, Ahmad al-Uda, head of one of the militias, it's going to be the solution to all our problems in southern Syria. And we said right from the beginning that it's not going to happen. And today is in Jordan. So there is never a vacuum, and the Iranians entered to this vacuum first and foremost the moment the rebels lost, and recruited the rebels who lost and made them subordinate to the IRGC and their own militias. To stop the funding, Orna talked about many suggestions of how to help the Lebanese. I think this is the main way to stop the fundings, not only from Africa, from anywhere in the world. We've seen what happened when our defense minister announced 6 civilian Palestinian associations that as terrorist organizations. There are tons of associations like that of Hezbollah that are operating in Lebanon and outside of Lebanon. And they are also fundraising for the military arm of Hezbollah. That's the only way to fight Hezbollah with no ammunition, without killing anybody. Stop the funding to Hezbollah. Escalation is an option. You can never know whether it will happen or not, but it's definitely an option that we will see more of these street fightings between Hezbollah and the Christians.
Orna, do you want to have the last word?
Well, the sources of power of economic power of Hezbollah are, of course, Iran and a black economy. They are smuggling. They have donation from everywhere through Muslim everywhere, and this is it's very difficult to find the ways that this black economy is going. But we have to try to do that also. They are involved in smuggling drugs and everything. This is one thing. The second one is about Iran. Iran is giving Hezbollah most of its budget, most of its military equipment. So if the Iran situation improves, it says that they can help more, give more help to Hezbollah. So when you are pressuring Iran, it's both for the sake of the nuclear issue, and the second is for the sake of weakening Hezbollah also.
Wonderful. Thank you both so very much for this very, very insightful Zoom. We appreciate all you do to safeguard Israel, as well as to educate us about the situation there. And we very much appreciate your friendship, your time, and we look forward to future occasions here in Zoom and, God willing, in person to engage with you.